are discussing many things, and the focus is sustainable EV. Sustainable EV, and how can we do it right? The Deputy Mayor of London said this morning, it's only little time left. And when you have an enthusiastic community like this, we might be a bit careful and mindful to do it right. So my speech and what we will show you is about doing it right. And our vision, I think our joint vision is this, right? It's about sustainability. It's about taking care of what we have for future generations. And it is about creating a circular economy, which we don't have. The economy that we have is linear, and things end up as waste. And we come back to that because that's very, very important. So this is our vision. Nice photo. It could be that. It could be that. It could be a place here in UK. This is where I come from. This is southwestern Germany. And you might have heard of what has just happened in southwest of Germany. It was this. So some scientists say this flood that we had in July in only one night, which was devastating, it killed 190 people. It left 10,000 people without their homes. 40,000 households were kind of kicked out within minutes. We had this 10-meter high waves, 24 schools got closed, 6 hospitals had to close, 62 bridges were destroyed, and the water came in high waves like a tsunami due to the bridges that broke and all the pressure of the water. So what did scientists say about this? They said, we have now reached a point where we can say we're past the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is a time where we think that we as humans are able to create and design and do things as we like. And this shows we can't anymore. We can't anymore. Climate change has already reached our lives, our everyday lives. So we're still fighting the results of this flood. And that looks like that. So here I am. There's some EVs in this also. I took this picture myself just last week. And we face 50,000 cars that have been flooded away and trucks that have been flooded away. And of course, filled 4 million liters of diesel that was spilled all over the place. So it's a really dirty stuff and a lot of mineral and dirt. You can see that on the cars that we have to clean up. So this is my look at transportation right now in my home district. So when I face this, I know that what I have done for 35 years now, driving the circular economy transition and going into renewables, is more and more important. And this is why I would like to explain why. On the right-hand side, you can see the Earth system's trends. And of course, climate change and carbon in the atmosphere is just one of those little charts that you can see here that is accelerating and has really the character. You can see that on the right-hand side, it's the first line, the first green picture. And on the left-hand side, you can see the socioeconomic trends. So this is what we as humans in the Anthropocene in a time of industrialization have created. And the chart begins in the year 1750, but there's also a small dotted line which shows us the year 1950. So all that has been driven, and all these effects, you can see there is some synchronism in this, right? Has been driven since 1915 years with our industrialization, with going fast, with taking up speed and changing our everyday lives. So when I hold this speech and I say, well, let's think about this a little bit. We're in the post-Anthropocene, maybe we are in there, and we have driven that so far, and it's man-made, then we should be able to turn around and we might not be able anymore. So what is it that we can do? And let's have a look at that. What is it that we can do? 50 years ago, the Club of Rome was founded. It is a club of scientists that is really independent. They are really untangled and unbound and free people that were able to look at the borders and boundaries of our planet. And they showed us, and this is what you can see in this kind of cake, in each piece of this cake shows us one boundary. So what we're looking and discussing here is climate change, which is only one of the pieces of this cake. It's only one element. It's only one focus. And there are even more extreme foci to have. You can see the darker red it is, the more difficult it will be to change the systems. And one of the systems that we'll have to change is the biochemical flows, which is, they're referring to phosphorus and nitrogen. But another one is also the biospheric integrity, which refers to the extinction per million species. So there is more than one crisis ahead. And how can we find solutions in what we do, also focusing on the other crises, so we will not create rebound effects and have more problems? Now, this picture is just, or this image is just to give you an idea to take away for today. And I hope you'll take it away. It's pink for you to remember. Just imagine the carbon that is exposed to the climate could be seen. We can't see the carbon, can we? It's invisible. And because it's invisible, we're not acting as fast as we should. If the atmosphere were pink or red and would be getting darker, the more we expose carbon to the climate, we'd probably see this as an alarm and we'd act faster. And we'd have the everyday reminder to change things. So I hope you take it away. Whenever you look into the sky, just think what might happen if it turned red or pink or get darker. So what's the global dimension? Climate change is about global dimensions. The global dimension of circularity is this. Every year we extract 100 billion tons of resources from this planet. And this is only from the figures that scientists are able to bring down. And how much can we see is held in our economies so we can focus it and see it again and don't lose it, because carbon is a waste in the atmosphere. We can see it, so we lose it. How much of what we extract is really returned? And it's only 9 to 10% each year. That's like nothing. I mean, just think 92 billion tons of course, fossil fuels, but any kind of minerals are just getting lost. This can't be, right? And I can't imagine this. This is a figure that I can't really imagine. I can see this. Can you imagine piles of that size? I took in this picture to just show what it looks like in Austria. This is an Austrian calcium resource where they dig up the material, and you can see the pretty mountains. And what we know, that these mountains have permafrost on their tops, and the permafrost on their tops is melting. So within the next 20, 25 years, the tops of the Alps will break down, and they will come down with all the mineral and the mud and the flood with a rain like the one I had in my district this summer. And what would this look like? Will we be able to recover that those resources that are there that we like to pick up? I'm not sure. There might be an end to it. So let's have a look at the resources that we need. And of course, I've brought you some scientific good studies for looking at the supply scenarios that you will need as an EV community. What we can see here on the left-hand side, that's the big column, is the scenario that was made up by the scientists coming from IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change. They said, okay, what if we imagine we not use any kind of non-renewables, take out the fossil fuels? Where does the energy come for this transition that we need for our world and the human industries to exist? And so they created that scenario. And on the other hand, on the very right, we have the ARENA remap, the ARENA as a European organization for renewables. And they created this scenario looking at what politicians have decided. So this is a purely political scenario on the right-hand side, and the top of the column is gray. It shows the fossil fuels. Yeah, so that is still a very big difference, but this is where we are. This is where we are. And now if we have a deeper dive into the scenarios and look, what will it mean for storage requirements and for the materials and the resources that you will need, for example, to make batteries. So I looked into batteries. I thought that would be a good point for today. Will we have enough batteries to follow up on these scenarios to really spread and do what we have just heard from Oliver and many others to continue driving the energy transition? And we'd figure out, if you see the IPCC scenario, that's the big blue one, we have huge storage requirements. So let's go one step further. Huge storage requirements. What does this mean for battery and for resources? Here we'll find all the elements that we will need for these resources on the left-hand side. From aluminum to calcium, lithium, everything is in there. And we have a timeline, which is on the top, beginning 2010 and right now ending in 2080. And the red lines show us where the development horizons of the various materials will deplete, where we will just not have enough resources anymore. When will that be? And we can see, for example, that we have a shortage of cobalt already beginning, and cobalt will be out before 2030. I mean, whoever is interested in resources and the question of your business will be able to work after 2030, have a look at this. Have a look at this. Or have a look at that. Have a look at that. It's scrap, right? It's metal scrap. And you can have it from electronic devices and chips, for example. Computer chips, right now, we have a scarcity of computer chips on all sorts of things because we don't recycle. We don't return the things into our system. That then looks like that, what is getting returned. We could do it better. And the figures that we have on doing it are really a disaster. So what's the basics of understanding what circular economy is about? When you create a business today and you create EV solutions, what is happening to your solutions, to your cars, to your mobiles, to your storage equipment that you provide? What is happening at an end of life or when they break? Have you thought about it? Have you contracted it? Have you set up yourself, your business, for returning this? These are the definitions for the circular economy to be implemented in all sorts of legislative sets. In UK also. So the general definition is you try to keep all the resources in economic use as long as possible. And it just goes through all sorts of legislative settings. So United Nations, European Commissions, and I could look in many of those, and we'll find about the same. So it's about recycling and returning. It's about repair and refurbishment. So creating a solution now needs also the thought about returning it when it breaks into the economic cycle. And it has a criteria, which is the design criteria, showing us two cycles. One is for consumption, for example, just using energy that is renewable, coming from solar, wind power, or water. So it is clean. Also for consuming products as human beings, they should be clean and not harm the environment, not harm us as humans or any other species. And then, of course, when we invest, we have these technical devices that have been taken from this planet as resources. And of course, it's most important that we return them that way. So this is the general idea. It's called cradle to cradle, the principle. And to stick to it is really hard because you're not able to glue things together. There are certain rules to designing the elements. And if you don't do that, you can't return it correctly to the system because you'll mix up the numerous materials, fluids that we have, which is over 2,000, and they are registered in REACH, which is a European legislative setting for that. The resolve principle really shows us how we make up business cases, how a business case should be designed. How should your EV business case then be designed? It should be regenerative, of course, when using regenerative energy. It's about sharing, it's about optimizing, and then I don't discuss efficiency. It's about effectiveness. There's a big, big difference, but this would be another speech. We can return to that or do it out a little bit later. It's about closing the loop. It's also about digitalizing, virtualizing, and exchange, like what we do here, to handle things wisely. So that's a principle. And we use systems theory. I don't need to explain this example that is shown here. We use digitalization to analyze what is the best solutions, looking at the systems that we provide, and not only looking at a single solution, but providing it in interaction and in a complex structure with other elements of the system that we are looking to find solutions for. So what are the game changers that we can see? And I think you already know this. When we have the energy transition, we will not have the production of energy on one side and the consumer on the other side, but we have a prosumer, which is a different role. Another game changer is the EPR, the extended producer responsibility, which refers to your role, and you're responsible for everything that has to be returned to our system. And you have to pay for it, either if you expose carbon to the climate by ETS and carbon taxes, or you might get a return by verified emission reduction certificates, which will come up. The European Commission is just ready to do the legislation for that. So we will have a totally different taxation and billing system. And of course, another game changer is the idea not to own things. Why do we have to own things? What for? When I leave this planet and when I die, I will not take away anything. Everything will be left to my kids, grandchildren, to my family. So use instead of ownership is important for me as long as I live. So light as a service is just an example. And I think you have created numerous business cases where you create services and you don't exchange ownership. So this is also a big game changer. Now, what can we see on the international level? I'm a member of the Circular Car Initiative by the World Economic Forum. And they've started that to engage people in the thought of building a new world of mobility, but also thinking about returning every detail of this. It's really about effectiveness. It's what we have here, it's like the BMW, which was presented as the Vision Circular, or the Tesla truck. Those are just visions, but it's really interesting to get into that, because you can take these cars apart fully, and you should be able, I haven't made the test yet scientifically, and you should be able to return and recycle and refurbish all of these elements. But it will also show that we will get totally different businesses when we refurbish cars as long as possible. So the future of EV, sustainable EV, will be about refurbishment, about retrofitting trucks, for example, and electrifying them. This is really a big, big business case that's now coming up, and we see more and more companies doing that. So these are the trends, just to have a look at it. What will the trends be? What can be seen? We have a Future Institute that is scanning that every year. So what we can see right now is the cars are leaving the city, and we have other mobility solutions, but not cars that enter the city. We have an evolution of urban living spaces. It's like the living room in the street, children playing there again, people exchanging things, meeting in the streets. This is something we can watch. It's ongoing. Cargo bikes become the new normal. Mobility as a service, that's a business case. Seamless intermodal personal mobility is a must for the users. Mobile living, like homes, caravans, trucks, and cars, are more and more common, and more people use that. And of course, we see e-mobile light trucks in the streets coming up. So these are the actual trends that we can see. And now we're there. We have other questions to solve. And in these past, today and yesterday, we heard a question addressed: how can enough energy, enough renewable energy be supplied in time, in the way you need it? So that was a question that I took along when I left office, and I said, we need to find something there. If we're not able to fill in this gap where the battery will not find enough resources to go on in this energy transition. Remember, I showed the chart, we will have a problem with resources and battery supply. So the circular question that turned up for me is, how can we solve this? And this is when I started scouting, because I hadn't seen this in my country. And I found a project in Finland, and this is when I met Ted. Yeah, he's British, so good. And it's a European project, so you're still involved as Brits. I'm so happy. So I'd like to introduce Ted as, and there's a great story to it, because he's a descendant of the great James Watt. And the project and the solution that he brings us with his team and Teraloop is really exciting, because it closes a gap. It closes the gap between circularity, and it tackles the challenge of solving all of the crises with one solution for the EV world. So please welcome Ted, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eveline. Right, just a very quick non-judgmental question. How many people in here drive an EV? Yeah, okay, so good. There are a few of us still hooked on fossil fuels. So what does fast charging mean? 150 kilowatts, 350 kilowatts, 450 kilowatts? Well, those of us who are still stuck with fossil fuels, when you stand at a pump and squeeze the trigger, you get 40 litres regulated per minute of diesel. Each litre of diesel has 38 megajoules of energy. That's 25 megawatts. Apologies for the font, by the way. Embedding fonts in PowerPoint, they still seem to become errant. 25 megawatts, and this illustrates the problem of why we're addicted to fossil fuels. It is as much about, it's less about the energy, generating renewable energy, and as much about delivering the power when and where we need it. And we heard this yesterday from Andrew Goodenough at Bristol Airport. We heard it from Petalite. And we know we need DC fast charging. But the question is, can we do it without digging up even more copper and then burying it in the ground somewhere else? Can we do it without an infinite reliance on lithium and companion chemicals? So the question is, how can we mitigate these issues and enable the growth of DC fast charging with technology that's fit for purpose and that doesn't cost the earth? So Teraloop has a solution for this. We're offering just such a solution. We're developing effective, scalable, and sustainable energy storage for the daily markets. Effectively, we're making batteries work better and last longer. There's an awful lot of technology and business case detail I could go through now, but I want you to remember just 3 things. First, I'll tell you about the technology. It's based on a flywheel, wouldn't it be, as a descendant of James Watt? But this time we use a thin ring flywheel. That's the green around the edge, or the bluey green around the edge. That means we can spin the rotor much faster and store more energy. It means we use less material. It's a carbon fiber rotor. And the implication of this is that we can make the device cheaper. So we have a reduced capex for power, for dollars or pounds per kilowatt, and a lower levelized cost of storage. And in fact, we can make the device as powerful and as specifically powerful as 1 megawatt in 1 square meter. So when we look at a future where footprint becomes an issue, then this becomes very valuable. I mentioned footprint, 1 megawatt per square meter. 98% round trip efficiency. But it's not just about that. It's also about handprint. How can we use materials that are all available to come back into the same value chain? And this is why we're working with Eveline and Thinking Circular. She's our guiding light for this. So we're developing bio-based carbon fiber that doesn't use polyacrylonitrile. We're using recycled carbon fiber from the growing supply from recycled wind turbine blades. And we're developing epoxy resins that can be removed through solvolysis and again be recycled, and making more effective recycle of the carbon fiber. The end result of this, our rotor embodies 90% less energy and new carbon fiber. So it's a very effective way of becoming a more circular company. What about EV fast charging? We're looking, what about this in the context? We're looking at a forecourt plus food court model, recognizing that energy companies are looking at their retail assets and need to work on those. So let's think we're talking about waypoints only. We're not talking about the new business for Shell or BP, about destinations and about residential. This is the challenge that we've heard about making a business case for fast charge and waypoints. Using this scenario where we've imagined you've got a single 50 amp supply in giving you 35 kilowatts. What happens if we rig up our device? You can see here, partnered with a battery, a small battery. What do you get out of it? The answer is we can increase the utilization by 450% and reduce the cost of the storage by 60%. And of course, that gives the asset owner increased revenue. But the picture is bigger than that, because most energy companies aren't looking at a single charge point. They're looking at the environment, if you like, the distributed energy resources, the mixed assets. And so our big project at the moment is our very first fully commercial proof of concept, and that's with Siemens at a virtual power plant. So that is where we are. The sector is still young. We've heard different arguments, different lines over the last few days. and a lot of it to do with DC fast charging. And so it's an exciting phase of opportunity. And my call to you is to work with Teraloop to pilot waypoint fast charging and virtual power plants, remembering these three things about us: effective, scalable, and sustainable, making batteries work better and last longer. Thank you for listening. I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Ted and Eveline. We're going a couple of minutes into the break, but I think we've got a few minutes for questions. So we've got one over there, if we can get a roving mic going.
Hey, this is just Stepanek from Has2V Austria, ChargePoint. You said 1 megawatt per square meter. There must be some cubic size as well. So a square meter is just flat, you know. So you need some.
Of course. The simple answer is that the device you saw takes up less than a square meter. I'm just trying to go back on these slides now. Okay, yeah, so the footprint of the storage device, here we go. I'll speak with others. So this is the world's largest hubless flywheel. It's 3 meters across, and thank you. And this is the device we're installing at the virtual power plant. You can see the thin ring, and this one is a high power version, and that's still within 1 square meter, and we can upgrade that to 1 megawatt. So the part that's missing from this is the power electronics, which are over here. And obviously the cabinet takes up more space. But the reason that we don't quote it is because clearly when you install something like this, it goes into an infrastructure that already has certain limits, AC, DC, whatever it happens to be. So we would need to, we need to adapt the exact solution on top of our technology to account for what is there. But yeah, 1 megawatt, less than 1 square meter. This is about 60 centimeters across.
Are there any other questions from the floor?
Sorry.
Thanks, Ted. That's really fascinating. My name's Dominic Quennell from Enotechnos. How big can you go with that thing, and how long can you store energy for? I'm thinking about grid level storage.
Sure. Okay, so our plan is, I mean, our intellectual property relates really to this thin ring, and we can make this very large. There's one technical challenge that we get around, which is to do with rotor expansion, but there are so many gains from it. We have much better gyroscopic stability with a flat rotor, and the advantages of additional energy storage. So right now we're developing this 3 meter rotor up to a 1 to 5 megawatts. Power is easy for us, and 100 kilowatts upwards. That's where we're going now. This device is 12 kilowatt hours, and that is ideally suited for EV fast charging, because that is currently the modal charge amount for fast charging. And we think in the future it'll give approximately 100 kilometers of range. Not quite there yet. So our own development path is very much this way. No one else can make a flywheel with a significant amount of energy. There's Amber Kinetics, which have a 4C rating. They do 32 kilowatt hours. The megawatt version of this will go up to between 20 and 40 kilowatt hours in future. So we're very much aiming at the moment, as you can see, for the EV fast charging sector for that, because the power is, for us, we can produce cheap power that is fit for purpose.
Thanks, Ted. I think I've been given the signal that we have to have a break now. This is the problem with having a really hard-hitting, interesting presentation of new technology just before the break. So if I can suggest that any other questions, come and find Ted and Eveline in the break. So if you just thank them, that'd be great.
Thank you, Dickon. Thank you.
And we are back in here at 20 to 12. Please do remember the COVID system of one-way systems, and that there are 2 rooms for coffee points to go and have a chat. Please do come and network, and see you back here in about half an hour.